So I really had to do a discussion for the third book because the second book, when I read it, I was so excited about it and I had so many thoughts and theories about it that was the book that actually brought me back to booktube. I had a little bit of a hiatus there for a year, and The Invasion of the Tearling, the second book, was what brought me back to making videos again, and I've been on a roll ever since. So I just had to do a discussion video for this one. This morning I actually watched that video that I had done those months before about The Invasion of the Tearling because I did have a lot of thoughts and theories. I just compared them to what actually happened in the book. So later on in this video, I'll just kind of say what my old theories were and if they turned out to be true or not. Obviously, this is going to be full of spoilers. If you just want to hear about what this book series is about in general, I do have a video on that, which I will leave in the description box below. I wanted to give this book 4 out of 5 stars, and I really thought that I was going to until the ending happened, and it's kind of been changing the whole way that I've been thinking about this series, which I'm really trying not to let it do that. I hate that an ending can affect an entire book for me, and I'm trying to get a little bit better about that, but the ending really can be super important, especially the ending to a series that's been building and building for 3 books. First, just want to try to get my beginning thoughts out of the way. Honestly, was anyone else a little bit bored that Kelsey was just stuck in the dungeon? I think in the second book, we just saw her growing and growing. She was the Queen of Spades, she was turning dark, she was turning into Lily. It was just like so much crazy character development. It was so great to see. And then in this book, I feel like we didn't really get any of that. Kelsey's perspective was honestly the most boring of it all. And the only time I was interested in Kelsey was when she was talking to the Red Queen, because I'm just so fascinated in the Red Queen because she's this villain that we've read about for 2 books. I am a little disappointed that our villain is not really the villain that she set out to be. She just kind of lets her kingdom get torn apart, and it's almost like she's okay with it, and then she just gets Kelsey to kill her in the end. See, I did have a feeling that the author was going to humanize the Red Queen a little bit more, and that she was going to kind of give her that backstory and try to make us not hate her as much. I wanted her to be just as cruel and evil as she always was, but then she turned out to being way more of a human than I honestly ever expected. And then the other weird thing is that we got another villain that came out of nowhere, Ro Finn. We had heard a little bit about in the second book and maybe even the first book, but it's been so long since I read the first book. But I feel like it just kind of came out of nowhere, and then he was the ultimate villain, but he wasn't even an actual being in this book because we only saw Ro Finn in the past elements, but we didn't even see Ro Finn as a presence in this book, which made it so weird because we had this ambiguous evil villain that we couldn't even really put a face to in the present day self. What about the 300 years that passed? Like, why don't we know anything about Ro Finn in those 300 years? We just know Ro Finn as a child and then Ro Finn with this army of orphans, but what happened between then? I think that Katie's story was probably my favorite perspective. I really, really loved seeing the utopia that William Tear envisioned for the Tearling, and I really loved seeing it kind of degress a little bit, which is really unfortunate. It made me so sad and heartbroken to see. But I think that past world was built very well. I could entirely picture the town and the essence of the town when we went back into Katie's chapters, and so there was something that I very much looked forward to reading about because I could really get immersed. Some things in the present day were a little murky to me in terms of description. I kind of was a little unsure of where things were, what they looked like, but with the past town, I really could feel it. I can't hold off talking about the ending any longer, so here goes. This ending disappointed me, and disappointed me because it was a cop-out, and I've been trying to think, oh, it wasn't exactly a cop-out, it was kind of good, but no, it really was a cop-out. We had so much tension building between the church and the Holy Father and this Mort kingdom, and then she just goes and makes it as if it never happened before, which is a huge disappointment because I feel like I'm left without having all the answers that I want. Like, I want to know what would have happened if she hadn't been able to go to the past. Like, what would have happened to New London? Would it have been completely ravaged? Would she have been able to gain hold of her kingdom again? What would have happened to the Mort kingdom? They didn't have a ruler anymore. It was a mob rule. Would they have turned to a democracy? Like, what would have happened to Ro Finn? Would he have been able to be defeated? Would his orphan freaking creepy children have been able to be killed? I don't know what would have happened, and it's just frustrating that we spend so much time delving into the story, so much time building on these intricate plots and intricate details of this political system, and then we don't even get any real answers to it all. We just get like a, oh, it never happened. It was just a cheap way to end a series that I feel like I had invested you know, a good bit of time with, and then just to have the ending that she just goes back in the past and kills Rofin, so none of it ever happened ever, was just a little weird. That being said, I think seeing New London as it should have been was really, really refreshing. I was really glad that we got to see New London as William Tear envisioned it. It wasn't exactly the perfect utopia that he envisioned, but it was nowhere near close to the New London that Kelsey was the queen of. But it just kind of washed away all the struggle. It almost just felt like, well, if the whole thing could have been solved by putting a crown on your head, then what was the whole point of it? It wasn't a very intricate ending compared to how intricate the rest of the series had been. And in this third book, I felt like some characters just kind of changed. I mean, the Fetch was this elusive, mysterious character that we had seen in the first two books, and Kelsey was very strongly attached to him. And then we learned that he's Gavin, and since that point, I mean, the Fetch isn't really mentioned anymore. It's almost like he just gets dropped off. He's not too important. I thought he was gonna have a big role to play in this, but he actually had no role to play in this book. So in that respect, I also feel like he was a bit of a letdown, because I thought there was gonna be some great ending for him or some great story about him, but he just fizzled out. And now I'm going to mention some of the theories that I had thought about from the second book and see how they compared to the actual book. First one, I said the sapphires will still work for Kelsey even though she gave them over to the Mort Queen, and that she still would get to see Lily's past. And this was partly true. She did give those sapphires over, and she still was able to access Katie's past even without the sapphires. So I'd say it was partly true. Next, I said the crown was as magical as the sapphires, maybe even more so powerful, which was definitely true. The sapphires brought Kelsey to the past in her memory, but the crown of sapphires actually transported her to the past and let her change the past, which obviously was how this book ended. Final theory I had was that Kelsey will end up with Penn in the long run. That definitely didn't happen. There was no romance at all in this final book, which I'm very much okay with. I don't think I'm even upset that Kelsey didn't end up with Penn, because I wasn't really attached to them as people. I also said Kelsey will lose her beauty and return back to her old self. So this was true, but for different reasons. I thought that Kelsey's beauty would fade, but it wasn't that it faded. It was that she changed the whole past so that she never became queen at all, and so her appearance never changed. So I was right, she didn't remain beautiful Lily, but I was right for a different reason. Well, that's really all that I have to say for this book and this series. If you've read this book series, I would love to hear what you thought of the ending, and if you agreed with me at all, or if you thought it actually was a really decent way to wrap things up. So let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and happy reading.